So thank you for joining us today. We are going to talk with this distinguished panel about three different topics. The Democrats' unprecedented, I call republic-ending lawfare against President Trump, his top aides, his supporters, parents, and Christians. We're going to talk about big tech, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, and why they are a major problem in America. And then we're going to talk about immigration. So we have 26 minutes to get through three very big topics, so we'll start with the lawfare. Right now, President Trump faces 91 charges from 4 different Democrat prosecutions across America, 700 years in prison for non-crimes. The non-crime of objecting to a presidential election, the non-crime of paying back, the non-crime of paying back sophisticated Wall Street banks on time, in full, with interest. That's the civil lawsuit by Tish James. We see Alvin Bragg, Soros-funded Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, bringing unprecedented indictments against President Trump for settling a nuisance claim. And they've somehow turned that into the first indictment ever against a former president and future president of the United States. And we have an attorney general here from Texas, Ken Paxton. We have a future attorney general from North Carolina, Dan Bishop, our great congressman. And then we have all-star Stephen Miller. So that's our panel today, and let's start with General Paxton. What should we be doing in response to this unprecedented lawfare against President Trump, his top supporters, his attorneys, January 6 supporters, parents, Christian? You're the victim of this lawfare in Texas, where you had drunk Dade, the House Speaker, impeaching you for nonsense. So what are we going to do to fight back against this lawfare?
Yeah, and so Donald Trump, you said 700 and how many years? Mine is only 204, so I'm on the low end.
Weak.
So what I would say is the Democrats, they always support their own, whether they're guilty or not guilty. Republicans have in the past tended to distance themselves from any kind of controversy related to legal, and we just can't do that anymore. Not only do we have to embrace our people, but we also have to support them, both financially, we have to support them with our words. We can't run from it because they are destroying us with the legal system. And the way the legal system is structured now, they send you to courts in very liberal counties with very liberal judges, very liberal juries, all the way up the line. So instead of applying the law, they apply politics, and your name is all that matters. Your name is Donald Trump, you're guilty. If your name is Ken Paxton, you're guilty. I'm not going to name anybody else because I don't want anybody else to be indicted. But that's the way it works. And if we don't stand behind our own people, they're going to take everybody down that stands up for the people.
I would say this about Ken Paxton in Texas. He is a target because he has been the tip of the spear, leading the effort to hold big tech accountable. He's been the tip of the spear on immigration. The Uniparty hates Ken Paxton, and that's why they're trying to take him out. I always joke that I'm going to be Trump's attorney general, which is not possible because there's that pesky thing called Senate confirmation. Ken Paxton would be a fantastic attorney general in a Trump 47 administration. And here's a future attorney general in North Carolina, Dan Bishop. What would you do about this lawfare? How should we respond as a movement?
We have to fight back. That's what Ken Paxton's example has been in Texas. That's why in North Carolina, we've never elected a Republican attorney general since 1896. It's kind of an anomaly in North Carolina as the two-party system's matured there, but we've been right on the precipice of it. But what I realize serving in Congress and watching this is that's an open seat in North Carolina, and we need more soldiers on the field who can make a difference like Ken has done in Texas. And the state attorney general's tool is one of the most effective in the tool bag. But again, what we've got to do is fight back. I think it's another aspect of what Ken just said. among people who tend to be conservative, the very fact that someone brings a charge, no matter how crazy, no matter how inventive or novel the application of a particular statute to allege a crime, people tend to be repelled or to pull back in sort of a respectful, fear or disconnection. When you see the corruption that we've seen in the system, that no longer can be the case. We've got to lean in. We've also got to use every tool at our disposal to fight them back. And that's why I'm going to run for North Carolina's Attorney General.
Stephen, what's your response to this lawfare?
Well, first of all, good morning, CPAC. It's great to see so many people here at this panel today, because this is the most important conversation topic I think you could possibly have in America right now. The fact that you're all here shows that you all understand that. And I'm honored to be on this panel with so many, three incredible legal minds and legal warriors. And in particular, I want to say that, let's give them a round of applause, especially, of course, our current and future Attorney General. Because the only way out of this nightmare is going to be filling every legal office in this country with Dan Bishops and Ken Paxtons. That's the short answer.
Amen.
And so this is exactly who should be here for this conversation for that reason. There's something very broken in the conservative brain, and it has been for a long time. And call it a mental illness, call it a spiritual failing, call it a moral deficiency, call it weakness, softness, or just being pathetic. There is something really broken in the conservative brain. They're afraid not only of conflict, we know that, but there's an even deeper fear, a deeper fear than all of that, which is having power and using power. Conservatives are addicted to the language of libertarianism, which is fine. It's a terrible ideology. But in an academic setting, okay, have these debates. In the real world, you elect a DA, you elect a judge. If a lot of judges, of course, are elected all throughout the country, and only one side plays that game, the other side doesn't. You elect a state Supreme Court justice, you elect an attorney general, and so on and so forth. To have an office with specific powers, duties, and responsibilities, with the expectation that they will use that authority to defeat evil, to protect the good, and to accomplish positive change in society. And you have to use that power fearlessly. And you have to measure your success by what is actually happening in the world. So this may seem like a tangential point, but it's not. Conservatives pass laws all the time that say, do this and don't do that, do this and don't do that. But they don't actually change anything in the real world once those laws have been passed. A number of states, for example, have passed laws saying that you can't have this in the curriculum, or you can't have that in the curriculum, and you can't teach DEI, and so on and so forth. Without exception, I can promise you, all the commies in the classroom changed the name of their lecture, changed one word, changed one little paragraph in the syllabus, and did the exact same damn thing every single day because they're communists and that's what they do. Were they sued? No. Were they arrested if they broke a law and it's applicable? No. Did any DA anywhere, if you're talking about trans issues, think of arresting somebody for abusing children with trans ideology? No. We write blog posts about it. That's what we do. And as long as that continues to be the case, we're going to lose the country, we're going to fail, and all we're going to have about it is a record of all the times we whined and complained and did absolutely nothing. So until we get serious, all the way down to the local DA, all the way up to the state AG, and every office in between, including judges, electing people who have power and will use that power and measure their success by change in the real world, then we aren't going to be able to beat the left. And that's just the honest truth.
A quick follow-up on the lawfare. We have to be smart how we fight back against the left. And right now there is a bill working its way through the Florida legislature. It's well-intentioned. It makes it easier to sue media companies for defamation, right? But the problem is, it sounds great. I'm all about suing CNN and the Washington Post and all the other media outlets that attack us on a daily basis. The problem is the left has more trial lawyers, they have more money, they're better at lawfare than we are right now, and they're going to use this law in Florida to go after conservative media, Christian broadcasters, independent Hispanic media outlets who aren't leftist. That's the problem. And let's start with Stephen Miller on this, because you've been pretty vocal on this. What's your response to this Florida bill? How can we be smarter about how we fight back?
All right, let's see if I can do this in 30 seconds. We all want to go after the big corporate media, but you have to write laws to actually go after the enemy. Big, broad, neutral laws will be used to crush us. It will be used to obliterate us. Look at what New York did when they went after Donald Trump. They changed the law, which is unconstitutional, by the way, to go after one man. To go after one man. If you just have a law change in Florida that says it's way easier to punish people for defamation, end of law, what the hell do you think is going to happen? Every left-wing trial lawyer in the country is going to move to Florida and sue the hell out of every conservative influencer, podcaster, everybody else. Write the law so it protects your friends and harms the bad guys. Otherwise, you're handing them a sword to run right through you.
Congressman, what's your response?
Well said, Stephen. And here's an example of something that is carefully targeted. Last summer, the United States Supreme Court said state attorneys general could no longer sue, didn't have standing to sue, to hold the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, accountable when when Secretary Mayorkas, brazenly violates immigration law. Well, the Supreme Court, in that same opinion, invited Congress to confer standing specifically on attorneys general if it wanted to do so. So we've just marked up last week in the Judiciary Committee under Jim Jordan a bill that will do exactly that, re-extend the power to state attorneys general. That's going to work well without opening up a Pandora's box for us.
General Paxton, you have been the tip of the spear on the fight against big tech, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, and he is the guy who came up with the legal theory to go after Google's online advertising monopoly. That is the lifeblood of big tech. They use that money to promote their woke agenda, and they use that money to cancel conservatives. And so he got made fun of this legal theory many, many years ago when he came up with it. Now the Biden Justice Department and attorneys general across the country are going along with General Paxton's legal theory. So he has truly been the warrior on big tech. We have a problem with big tech. Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple have gatekeeping power in this country over information and commerce, and they use that gatekeeping power to silence conservatives and crush small businesses. We see this with Parler. People said, if you don't like Twitter, build your own. And so Parler came along, and what happens? You had Google and Apple kick Parler out of the App Store duopoly, and Amazon kicked Parler off the internet, right? If we did not have a benevolent billionaire with Elon Musk making this terrible investment in buying Twitter, we would not have free speech online in this country. And we shouldn't have to rely on benevolent billionaires to have free speech in this country. And that's why what Ken Paxton is doing in Texas is so important. I want to talk about that. We also have Amazon. Amazon is essentially China's shopping mall, right? They do China's bidding. They're crushing small businesses in America, and they're making a lot of money doing that. Amazon has this great image in America, and we need to change that because, again, if you think of Amazon, think of China. But I want to turn it to you, General Paxton, about your fight against big tech and what we need to be doing.
Sure. I just got to make a comment. I had the great opportunity working with Stephen Miller when he was in the White House. He was our go-to on getting ideas and working with the Trump administration. And I love to watch him up here because he starts off kind of like this. He's very he's like a professor, and then as he kind of gets into it, it can only take 30 seconds, and about 5 minutes later, he's up here, and he's like a Baptist preacher. So I love it. He is truly amazing. So I wanted to say one more thing about lawfare. It's not just people, the liberal Democrats that are doing this. We have Republicans doing it. I've had more trouble with Republicans doing this to me. And so we need to be aware that, like the Dade Phelans that I'm dealing with in our Texas House, who lets the Democrats run our Texas House. It's the Karl Rove of the world who enjoy the same type of push of using the legal system to take out what they call their enemies, Republicans. So we need to be very aware that it's not just the liberal Democrats that are doing this. It's some in our own party, and we need to hold them accountable. So I'm going to say that.
Yep. Let me add to that, because I think you see the same phenomenon in the U.S. House, in the Congress. It's Republicans that have stopped us from going to the mat to see to it that big tech firms are reined in. We've got to be able to go to the mat as a party. We've got to be able to do it together. We've got to fight for something. Unity alone, absent purpose, doesn't accomplish a thing.
So big tech, I agree with that, Dan. Big tech. My second term, beginning of my second term, I ran a second term. We'd been fighting the Obama administration. Trump had been elected, so I thought, you know, that war is over. Little did I know we would have Obama 3.0 with Joe Biden, and even worse. But I knew that we needed to figure out what was going on with the tech company. So I spent months going out to Palo Alto, the Silicon Valley, talking to professors, talking to technology experts, meeting with the Microsoft people that sued Microsoft for antitrust violations. I was trying to figure out, like, who's doing what. And out of all of that came, I think, 4 lawsuits against Google, a Facebook lawsuit, a Twitter lawsuit, and those have been extremely effective. The most effective was one that no one thought made any sense. We called it ad tech. And that's where Google dominates advertising on the internet. They control like 97%. They make over $120 billion a year, and they destroy companies. They increase prices on consumers, and there's no competition. When we applied that theory, no one thought it was legit. But here we are 4 years later, even after they tried to move us out of Texas to New York, we found a way back. Mike Lee helped us get a bill to allow us to control our own destiny. And this lawsuit now is scheduled against Google. We have already had some successful lawsuits against Google, but it's scheduled against Google to not just take back money that they've stolen from us and that they've illegally obtained by being anti-competitive and using unfair trade practices. It's also designed to change the structure of these companies so that they can't stop us from communicating, so they don't control our free speech. Because if the government indirectly can control our speech through these companies, the First Amendment is gone. And so we have to find a way, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah. I always say that conservatives, we believe in the free market, but that requires a functioning market. And if you have these trillion-dollar big tech monopolists, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, using their market power to crush competition, shutter small businesses, and cancel conservatives, we don't have a functioning market. We don't have a free market. And that's why it's so important we have people like General Paxton as the tip of the spear for many, many years going after big tech. And I'm going to turn this to Congressman Dan Bishop, future Attorney General of North Carolina. What would you do as the North Carolina Attorney General? I presume you're going to be teaming up with General Paxton on these issues.
Absolutely. I think of another example that's just developed a little bit lately, and I think, by the way, there's got to be effective working relationship between state attorneys general and Republicans in Congress to reinforce what each other is trying to do. We just saw an event the other day where first BlackRock and then Citigroup and all bailed out of this organization, this Climate 100 organization, to try to force ESG through their dominance of the market. And AGs did the same thing. AGs came out and said, this appears to be a violation of American antitrust law. We're going to pursue you if you don't stop. On the Judiciary Committee, we sent out letters asking them for their documents and so forth. And sure enough, after a while, they all sort of scattered like rats leaving the ship, and you had one down. So we're going to keep looking for opportunities like that. We're going to work closely with other Republican attorneys general across the nation. And here's something that's important, I think, to say. What we're trying to do, and what Stephen Miller's done with America First Legal and so forth, is we're actually pursuing the law. We're trying to enforce the law, not abuse it by circumventing it through the position of executive authority. And that's, whether you see that in Homeland Security or in the experiences Ken's talked about, that's got to be stopped, and that is ultimately our strength as conservatives. We support the rule of law. What we've got to be is more aggressive, as Stephen suggested, in getting after it and showing that we don't hesitate to use enforcement power to pursue the law.
It's called the rule of law, not the suggestion of law. Conservatives talk about the phrase rule of law all the time, but they forget the first word in that phrase is rule, as in it is supreme. When Democrats break the law, you bring it smashing down on them. That's the rule of law.
We're going to end with this non-controversial topic, immigration. We have President Biden importing 10 million people into this country. A lot of these people are unvetted. They don't share our values. They don't want to assimilate, many of them. And so I'm going to start this with Stephen Miller, who's been the tip of the spear on immigration. What should we be doing in a Trump 47 administration to fix this disaster, this invasion of our southern border?
Well, as I say sometimes, the immigration issue is extremely simple. The policies involved in fixing it are very complicated. The simple part is seal the border, deport all the illegals. Now, that's the short answer, right? You get in, you have two policy objectives that you proceed with utter determination on. Seal the border, no illegals in, everyone here goes out. That's very straightforward. In terms of the policy sets to accomplish this, as President Trump showed in his first term, it's a series of interlocking domestic and foreign policies to accomplish this goal. In no particular order, just to rattle off a few fast, you have your Safe Third agreements, you have Remain in Mexico, finish the wall, you have robust prosecutions of illegal aliens, you do interior repatriation flights to Mexico, not back to the north of Mexico. It's very important. You re-implement Title 42. You have several muscular 212Fs. That's the travel ban authority. We did a few of those in the Trump administration. You would bring those back and add new ones on top of that. You would establish large-scale staging grounds for removal flights. So you grab illegal immigrants, and then you move them to the staging grounds, and that's where the planes are waiting for federal law enforcement to then move those illegals home. You deputize the National Guard to carry out immigration enforcement. And then you also deploy the military to the southern border, not just with a mission to observe, but with an impedance and denial mission. In other words, you reassert the fundamental constitutional principle that you don't have a right to enter into our sovereign territory, to even request the asylum claim. The military has the right to establish a fortress position on the border and to say no one can cross here at all.
Yes.
I think the significance, Stephen, of what you just said is, in all the things you just laid out, we've got to have a president to do it. But it also is, you can't proceed in a way in which you're tentative and unsure. When Stephen said the idea that you deport everybody and everybody applauded, that's just because it's obvious what has to occur. And so you've got to actually be willing to take the step to do it. I look around this panel of wallflowers. I don't think you'll have any problem if you have people like this in leadership. In fact, I've never been on a panel where I was like the lightest, the easiest going guy. But I think that's something that's become clear in our politics. That's what we've got to do. Our nation's survival depends on that sort of aggressiveness in asserting ourselves.
Finish this out, General Paxton.
Yeah.
What are we doing in Texas? What do we need to do? If you're the future Attorney General, what do we need to do to fix this problem?
Texas has no interest in this issue. No, it's so obvious. We saw what worked under Trump. It was called enforcing the very things that he talked about. And as soon, literally day one, Joe Biden comes out and said, I'm not deporting anybody. And off to the races. We sued him. Within 3 days, we had an injunction. And he dismantled Remain in Mexico. He dismantled Title 42. He wasted all the resources appropriated to build the wall and let it all rot, paid contractors not to work, and all of that went to waste. The catch and release started up again. So all the policies that worked that brought all the numbers down, when you reverse those policies, all the numbers went up. I don't know why the media can't figure this out, but it's really obvious. And Joe Biden is clearly in partnership, without saying it, without having a written contract with the cartels. The cartels, this is true.
It's true.
He has told them openly, bring as many people here as possible as fast as you can. You don't have to hide from us anymore. You remember they used to hide? They used to try to sneak across? That is not what happens anymore. Unless they're like terrorists or really bad criminals, because they even let criminals in. We've sued them over that. So this is an administration that this is exactly what they want. They know they're helping the cartels bring drugs in, human trafficking. It is all designed by our own government. And so we are in a war with the cartels, with the Chinese importing fentanyl, and our own president against the United States and our country and my state. So we have to have a new president because this is clearly not working.
Amen.
13
Amen.
seconds left.
And that's the end. Thank you so much.